Many directors have tried to capture the quirky spirit of Wes Anderson, but almost always end up falling short for one reason or another. The biggest culprit for trying to copy Anderson I find these days is Taika Waititi. His films often centre on awkward protagonists in the same way as Anderson's do. Waititi doesn't have the same flair with his shooting and as much of a grasp on characters, however, so his films often feel like poor imitations. And Jojo Rabbit and Hunt for the Wilderpeople are both great, but pale in comparison to the likes of the Royal Tenenbaums or the Grand Budapest Hotel. This is somewhat ironic to mention, as Taika Waititi has a cameo in the film I'm reviewing here, and I almost screamed in agony at seeing his face yet again. In The Electrical Life of Louis Wain, it's clear that Will Sharpe has been influenced completely by one of America's best modern auteurs. All the characters are awkward in their own special ways, the shots are all very colourful and vibrant, and of course the film is shot at a 4:3 ratio. This film doesn't feel so much like a rip-off, but a complete homage to Wes Anderson. What also adds to the whimsical quirkiness of The Electrical Life of Louis Wain is the setting and nationality of the characters. The fact that this is set in Victorian to Edwardian Britain, a time when Brits were at their most stuffiest, adds all the more to the very playful and quaint tone the film goes for. The heart of what makes this film so heartwarming is Louis Wain himself. It's often a good way to show off your acting talent by playing someone who's somewhat on the spectrum, and Benedict Cumberbatch does just that to an excellent degree. His outing as Wain here is surely to be one of the highlights of his career. He's ratty, eccentric, and incredibly relatable in all the best ways. It's great to see Cumberbatch play slightly against type by not being a character who's very gifted and is very arrogant about it, and is instead someone who's very gifted and very humble about it. The character does have a very sad story that's often very hard to watch, but Cumberbatch's electric performance and the constant presence of silly cats takes you all the way through this tragedy. Cumberbatch is joined by a rather stellar cast, headlined by his character's love interest Claire Foy. Foy isn't playing much different to her most famous role as the Queen in this film, but she was always very good as Elizabeth II, and she's no different here. She's the centre of a lot of the most emotional scenes of Louis Wain's biopic, and her and Cumberbatch work very well off of each other. Their joint Britishness almost makes the film overly British at points, but that will certainly be a welcome element to Anglophilic audiences across the pond. The cast also includes quite a few cameos from actors who will be more familiar to British audiences, like Richard Ayoade and Asim Chowdhury in a slightly larger role, along with many other familiar faces. This to me felt a bit like Tom Sharpe gathering up all his mates from the BBC to work with a star like Cumberbatch, rather than any sort of genius casting. However, as with any film with lots of cameos, it's often a lot of fun to point at the screen and say, oh, it's that person, though it's lucky that the film itself was good, because it could hardly rely on this factor alone. Admittedly, there are points where The Electrical Life of Louis Wain can stop being so electric and start being a bit slow. There's a few scenes here and there that are maybe a bit long, and some could maybe have been cut altogether, but you'll hardly notice this, as the absolute flair on display in the directing, editing and cinematography is so in your face that you'll forget the last scene that was maybe a bit plodding. Benedict Cumberbatch shines as the lesser known artist who started our current relationship with our feline friends. Not only does Cumberbatch get to prove just how talented a performer he is, but he's being directed by an intriguing new talent in the world of filmmaking. Will Sharpe is sure to make an impression with this wonderfully whimsical biopic, and hopefully his next film will be just as colourful. The Electrical Life of Louis Wain gets a Deight score of 8. Happy dating, you loners.